You know what breaks most people in relationships? It's not rejection, it's confusion. It's that sickening middle ground between holding on and letting go, where you start wondering, what did I do wrong? Why did they pull away? Why can't I make them see I care? And here's the truth, nobody tells you. Avoidants don't pull away because you're not enough. They pull away because to them, closeness feels like danger. Love doesn't equal safety in their nervous system, it equals threat. So when you start chasing, when you start proving your worth, when you start over-explaining just to keep them close, what they actually feel is pressure. And pressure to an avoidant feels like panic. But let me tell you something. There's one thing, and only one thing, that cuts through all of that. It's not begging. It's not proving. It's not silence used like a weapon. It's a boundary. Not a wall, a boundary. And I'm not talking about the kind you use to control someone. I'm talking about the kind that teaches you what self-respect actually feels like. You don't lose people when you set boundaries. You lose people who benefited from you having none. And that's exactly why the right boundary doesn't push the avoidant away, it earns their respect. Because respect, real respect, isn't about fear. It's about clarity. It's about emotional steadiness. See, most of us think love is loud. We think it's texting back right away, explaining every feeling, filling the silence before it gets awkward. But love, real love, is calm. It's space that feels safe, not silent. It's energy that says, I'm not here to control you. I'm here to stay grounded while you figure yourself out. So if you've ever been in that moment where you're staring at your phone, wondering if you should reach out, wondering if you should explain again, wondering if walking away will make you lose them, stop. Because this moment right here is not about them. It's about you learning how to regulate you. The truth is, you teach people how to treat you by how calmly you treat yourself. The way you hold your energy when someone retreats, that's the moment you build respect. That's the boundary that changes everything. And today, I'm going to show you what that boundary looks like, the formula, the timing, and the consequence you can actually keep. Because once you master that, you won't need to chase respect. You'll embody it. Let's get something straight right now. Avoidants don't respect intensity. They respect stability. That's it. It's that simple and that hard. See, intensity feels like chaos to an avoidant. All those emotional highs and lows that anxious people confuse with passion, to an avoidant, that's danger. Their body doesn't read it as love. It reads it as instability. Because deep down, their nervous system was wired for survival, not connection. Let me explain what that means. When you're with someone who's avoidant, you're not just in a relationship with a person, you're in a relationship with their nervous system. And their nervous system has one job, to keep them safe from being emotionally overwhelmed. So when you raise your voice, when you chase clarity, when you push for reassurance, it doesn't matter how loving your intention is. Their body hears one thing, threat. They shut down. They pull away. They disappear. And here's the kicker. The more you chase, the more you confirm the very fear that keeps them running. But let me tell you something life-changing. You can't make someone feel safe if you're not safe in yourself. Read that again. Respect starts with your regulation, not their reaction. It's the energy that says, I don't need to match your distance or your panic. I can hold steady in the middle. Because that steadiness, that calm, grounded presence, that's what an avoidance nervous system learns to trust. Respect isn't loud. It's quiet alignment. It's consistency. It's the same tone on day 1 and day 50. It's your behavior matching your words. It's not how quickly you respond. It's how predictably you show up. Think about it. When you say, I'll call you tomorrow, and you actually do, that teaches their brain something new. That connection doesn't equal chaos. When you say, I need space right now, but I'll reach back out later, and you keep your word, that consistency rewires their experience of love. Because respect, biologically, is just the nervous system recognizing safety. It's not something you demand, it's something you embody. So if you've ever wondered, why do they respect the people who seem detached? It's not detachment that earns it. It's calm. It's boundaries without blame. It's being the thermostat in the room, not the thermometer. A thermometer reacts to everything around it: hot, cold, loud, silent. A thermostat sets the temperature and holds it steady. You are the thermostat. You decide what emotional climate you live in. And the moment you realize that, you stop begging for respect and start commanding it, not with words, but with energy. That's what we're building today. Because once you understand the psychology of respect, you'll stop trying to convince people to value you and start behaving like someone who already does. Let's talk about why most boundaries don't work. They fail not because you set them, but because you set them from fear, not from peace. You throw them down like a last-minute shield. You shout them through tears. You text them in frustration. You use them as proof that you're finally done, but you're not really done. You're still hoping they'll get the message and come chasing after you. That's not a boundary. That's a plea in disguise. And let me tell you something, avoidants can feel that. They can sense the emotional charge behind your words. When a boundary comes from fear, it sounds like control. And control to an avoidant doesn't sound like love, it sounds like threat. So what do? They retreat. They shut down. They protect themselves. Not because they want to hurt you, but because they're trying to stay safe inside their own emotional storm. Here's the truth most people don't want to hear. A boundary isn't meant to make them behave. It's meant to make you consistent. It's not about teaching them a lesson. It's about teaching yourself self-respect. Boundaries are not weapons. They're mirrors. And the moment you start using them to punish, you've already lost the clarity they were designed to give you. Let me give you an example. Saying, if you ignore me, I'm done, isn't a boundary, it's a threat. Saying, if you need space, that's okay. I'll be focusing on my own peace until we reconnect. That's a boundary. See the difference? One is fear talking, the other is calm clarity. Because every time you scream for respect, you teach the world that you don't have it yet. But every time you state your truth quietly and hold to it, you show the world and yourself that you already do. Avoidants don't respond to pressure, they respond to presence. They don't respect emotional fireworks, they respect emotional consistency. So here's the shift you need to make. Stop thinking of a boundary as a line drawn between you and someone else. Start thinking of it as a promise you make to yourself. A promise that says, I will not abandon my peace just to keep your approval. I will not trade my emotional clarity for your comfort. I will not over-explain to earn love that should already be safe. Say less, mean more. That's how you speak. In a language avoidants understand. Calm energy, predictable tone, actions that match your words. That's when a boundary becomes powerful. That's when it stops sounding like control and starts feeling like safety. And safety, my friend, is the one thing every avoidant, and honestly, every human being is secretly craving. Now, if that's the foundation, how do you actually build that kind of boundary? What do you say? When do you say it? And how do you make sure you don't fold the first time they test it? Let's go there next, because I'm about to show you the formula, the exact structure that turns your words into respect. All right, now that you understand why most boundaries fail, let's talk about how to build one that actually works. There's a simple formula. I want you to remember one that's powerful, clear, and emotionally grounded. Write it down. B equals request plus reason plus range. That's the respect boundary formula. Let's break it down. First, the request. This is what you're asking for, stated simply, calmly, directly. Not with a tone that says, I dare you to defy me, but with one that says, I value peace more than persuasion. Something like, I'd love to talk tomorrow instead of tonight. I need a few hours to reset before we get back into this conversation. Notice how those statements don't attack, they inform. They're not trying to control someone's behavior, they're communicating what safety looks like for you. Second, the reason. This is why the boundary exists. Not to justify it, but to give it emotional context. Because when people understand your why, your boundary lands softer. For example, I need a minute to reset so I can show up better. I get overwhelmed when things get heated. and I want to be thoughtful before we keep talking. Now, that why does something subtle but powerful. It tells the other person, this isn't about rejecting you. It's about protecting my peace. Third, the range. This is where you define what's okay and what's not. You're not building a cage. You're building clarity. Say something like, if I don't respond tonight, it's not me ignoring you. It's me self-regulating. I'll reach out tomorrow. That's what I call the range of respect. You're giving them and yourself a framework that turns absence into communication, silence into understanding. Now, here's what makes this formula work. You don't announce it with emotion. You live it with consistency. You say it once, calmly. You hold it twice, quietly. You enforce it 3 times, without drama. That's the repetition that rewires both nervous systems, theirs and yours. Because here's the truth. Boundaries that come from love, not fear, sound like wisdom. Boundaries set in panic sound like punishment. And avoidance, they can feel the difference. They trust the first one. They run from the second. Let me give you a few examples. Let's say your partner goes quiet for days. The old version of you would spiral, send 4 texts, maybe throw in a guilt trip, just to make them feel what you feel. But the version of you who uses this formula, you say, I can sense you need space. That's okay. I'm going to focus on my own day. And when you're ready to talk, I'll be here calmly. No manipulation, no threat, just presence. That's how you communicate emotional maturity without saying a single self-help word. Here's another one. You feel disrespected after an argument. You want to lash out. Instead, you breathe and you say, I care about us, but I need some distance right now so we can both cool off. I'll check in tomorrow. Simple, direct, regulated. That's what the request plus reason plus range formula does. It teaches both people how to feel safe in space, not scared by it. You stop using boundaries as armor and start using them as alignment. You stop trying to prove your worth and start protecting your peace. You stop saying I'm done every week and start saying I'm steady every day. That's what creates respect. That's what makes an avoidant slowly stop flinching at closeness, because your calm begins to feel like safety, not suffocation. Now, here's the next layer. A boundary isn't just about what you say, it's about when you say it. Timing is everything, because if you try to set a boundary in the middle of chaos, the message gets lost in the noise. So let's talk about timing. Let's talk about the quiet window, when a boundary lands softly enough to transform the dynamic without starting another war. Let me tell you something most people miss. Boundaries don't fail because they're wrong. They fail because they're delivered in the wrong state. You can have the most perfect words in the world, but if you say them in the middle of chaos, when your nervous system is flooded, your heart is racing, and your brain is screaming for control, it won't land. It'll sound like an attack, not truth. That's why timing is everything. The best boundaries aren't spoken in the heat. They're delivered in the quiet window. What's the quiet window? It's that moment after the storm, but before the reconnection. It's when the emotions have settled enough for your truth to sound like safety, not like blame. You can feel this window in your body. It's the exhale after the argument. It's the stillness before the apology. It's that tiny moment when your mind clears and you think, I know what I need to say, and I don't need to yell to say it. That's the window where growth happens. Because here's what most people do. They react instead of regulate. They try to prove instead of pause. And in doing so, they lose their power. Let me make this practical. When you're triggered, your body's job is to protect you, not to speak for you. So before you deliver any boundary, you must let your nervous system reset. How? By pausing, by breathing, by getting quiet long enough to remember that you're not here to win, you're here to stay aligned. I call this the pause pattern. Step 1, feel the heat, but don't respond from it. Step 2, wait until your voice and your heartbeat sound like the same rhythm. Step 3, then speak slow, calm, grounded. Because when you speak from regulation, you speak a language an avoidant can finally understand. See, when you drop a boundary mid-conflict, Their brain is still hearing threat, but when you drop it in the quiet window, their brain hears clarity. You go from sounding like control, you never listen to me, to sounding like calm leadership. When we both shut down, I need a little time to reset before we talk. And that difference, that's what builds trust. Because timing doesn't just change how they hear you, it changes how you hear yourself. You start realizing your boundaries aren't reactions, they're reflections of who you've become. You stop performing strength and you start embodying it. Try this the next time you feel tension rise. Don't announce the boundary right away. Take the pause, breathe, let the energy settle. And when you feel that inner stillness, that's your cue. That's the quiet window. Then speak from this rhythm. Observation, ownership, offering. Observation. I noticed we both shut down when things get tense. Ownership. I need time to reset before I can talk. Offering. Let's circle back tomorrow when we're calm. That's emotional maturity in motion. It's not confrontation. It's collaboration. And that's what respect sounds like to an avoidant stability. You don't need to sound strong. You need to sound regulated because your tone tells their nervous system you're safe now. And when safety enters the room, love finally has a chance to grow. Now, once you've mastered the timing, the quiet window, the next step is crucial. A boundary means nothing without follow through. So next, I'm going to show you how to create the consequence, not a punishment, but the kind of follow through that teaches your nervous system one thing above all else: self-trust. Here's where most people lose themselves. They build the perfect boundary, and then they abandon it the moment someone pushes back. They say, I'm not going to text him first this time. And 3 hours later, there they are explaining, justifying, over communicating, not because they're weak, but because they're scared. Scared of being misunderstood, scared of losing the connection, scared of the silence that comes after, self-respect. But here's the hard truth. Every time you break your own boundary, your nervous system learns one thing, that your word isn't safe. And if you don't believe your word is safe, no one else will either. That's why consequences matter. Not because you're punishing anyone, but because you're teaching yourself what stability feels like. So let me reframe this for you. A consequence isn't about what they lose. It's about what you protect. It's not about control. It's about consistency. When you follow through on a boundary, you're not saying, I'm cutting you off. You're saying, I'm keeping myself intact. You're showing your nervous system, I can stay calm even when it's quiet. I can hold steady even when they don't validate me. I can choose peace over panic. Let me show you what this looks like in real life. You don't slam the door. You don't ghost. You simply act in alignment with what you said. If you said you needed space for a few days, take it. Don't text to check in. If you said you'd step back until the energy feels mutual, honor that. Don't chase mixed signals. If you said you'd respond after you've had time to process, do it. Not early, not late, exactly when you said you would. That's not cold. That's consistent. And consistency, my friend, is emotional leadership. You see, for an avoidant, and really for anyone with relational fear, consistency feels like oxygen. It's the thing they never learned to trust growing up. It's the one language they actually crave but don't know how to ask for. So when you stop explaining and start embodying, when you hold your boundary with quiet steadiness, you do something profound. You give both of you a new experience of love. You show that peace isn't punishment. That space isn't rejection. That distance can actually be connection when it's grounded in self-respect. That's how you build trust, not through words, but through patterns, through repetition, through calm. Here's my rule. If you can't keep a consequence, don't set it, because every broken promise chips away at your confidence, but every kept promise, no matter how small, rebuilds it. So start small. Maybe your consequence is just waiting a full day before re-engaging. Maybe it's not explaining every feeling immediately. Maybe it's simply ending the conversation when your energy drops below calm. Those micro consequences become self-trust habits. And self-trust becomes emotional safety. Because respect doesn't come from threats. It comes from follow through. So stop trying to make your boundaries sound powerful. Make them consistent. Because in the end, respect isn't earned through fear. It's earned through repetition, through doing what you said you would do, even when your fear begs you not to. Now, let's bring this to life. What does all of this sound like in the real world, in your actual relationships, with actual words? Let's walk through the conversations, the scripts, the tone, exactly how you can speak a boundary that lands with grace and power. Let's bring this all down to earth because you don't need theory right now. You need language. You need to know what this actually sounds like in real life when your emotions are raw, the silence feels heavy, and you don't know what to say next. I'm going to give you 3 moments, real, everyday situations, and show you how to respond like someone who is grounded, not grasping. Scenario 1, when they go quiet. You can feel it, the energy shifts, the text slow down, the tone changes. You sense the retreat and panic starts to rise. The old you would have chased, filled the silence, tried to pull them back with reassurance, but not anymore. Now you take a breath and say calmly, clearly, I can sense you need space. That's okay. I'm here, but I won't chase. Take what you need. I'll be focusing on my own peace. That's it. No emotion dump. No hidden agenda. Just calm acknowledgement. You've turned silence into safety. And you've taught them and yourself that your love doesn't need to perform to be real. Scenario 2, when they reappear. They text. They circle back. They act like nothing happened. And part of you wants to celebrate, but another part of you remembers how much it hurt when they vanished. So instead of rushing in, you stay centered. You reply slowly, deliberately, I appreciate you reaching out. Let's take it slow. I want our conversations to feel calm, not rushed. You just did something revolutionary. You welcomed connection without abandoning your boundary. You didn't make them wrong, and you didn't make yourself smaller. You set the pace. And that pace, that emotional rhythm, is what earns respect. Scenario 3, when they test the limit. Maybe they dismiss your feelings. Maybe they joke about the space you asked for. Maybe they start to pull that same disappearing act again. The old you would have explained, justified, maybe even apologized. But the grounded you stay steady. That doesn't work for me. I care about you, but I'm not willing to repeat that pattern. You say it once, no lecture, no emotional storm, and then you pause. That pause is power. That pause communicates boundaries louder than any long speech ever could. Because sometimes silence isn't distance, it's dignity. And here's a bonus. Scenario 4, the conflict moment. You're in disagreement. Tension is rising. You feel your body heating up, your voice wanting to jump in and fix it. You stop. You take one deep breath and say, I want to keep talking about this, but I need a minute to calm down first. Let's come back to it when we're both regulated. That line right there, that's emotional mastery. That's what it means to lead the energy of the relationship instead of reacting to it. It's not avoidance, it's awareness. And I want you to notice something about all these examples. Not one of them comes from anger. Not one of them is defensive. They're calm. They're deliberate. They're kind. Because boundaries aren't about being hard, they're about being clear. Your tone matters more than your timing. Your pacing matters more than your proof. And your calm is your credibility. That's how you become someone an avoidant can trust, not because you bend to their fear, but because you model what safety feels like. And when you can hold that energy, calm, centered, consistent, something begins to shift. They start to match your rhythm. They start to regulate instead of retreat. And that's when the real transformation begins. Now that you know the language, let's take it one step deeper, because all the right words mean nothing if your emotions are still leading from fear. The next step is learning how to regulate before you relate, how to anchor your nervous system so your boundaries come from peace, not panic. This next part is the foundation of everything because no boundary in the world will work if you're dysregulated. You can memorize every line I've given you. You can practice every tone, every pause, but if your nervous system is screaming, don't lose them, underneath your words, they'll feel it. That's because people don't just hear what you say. They feel what you feel when you say it. So here's the hard truth. You can't connect from chaos. You can't communicate from fear. You can't teach safety while your body is in survival mode. That's why I say it again and again. Regulate first, relate second. When you feel that panic rise, that urge to explain, to fix, to text, to close the distance, pause. Don't act from the emotion. Breathe from it. Your breath is the bridge between reaction and respect. Here's how you do it. Step 1, pause before you respond. Don't confuse urgency with importance. When something triggers you, your first job isn't to answer, it's to breathe. Take one long inhale, exhale twice as long. Let your body know we're safe right now. Step 2, anchor your focus. Instead of asking, what are they thinking? Ask, what am I feeling? Because you can't manage their emotions, only your own. Naming your feeling lowers its charge. I feel anxious. I feel rejected. I feel unseen. The moment you name it, you start to tame it. Step 3, reground your purpose. Ask yourself this simple question. Do I want to be right or do I want to be regulated? One keeps you reactive. The other keeps you respected. When you start practicing this, you'll notice something incredible. Your energy changes before your words ever do. Your tone slows down. Your breath deepens. Your eyes soften. And suddenly, the dynamic shifts because regulation is communication. When you stay calm, you send this message to the avoidant. You're safe here. You can stay. And when they feel that, they stop running from love and start relaxing into it. But the secret no one talks about, this isn't about them at all. This is about you learning to be your own source of emotional safety. You start realizing you can survive the silence. You can sit in the discomfort. You can hold your truth without needing it to convince anyone. That's when your boundary stops being something you do and starts being something you are. Because real confidence doesn't sound like shouting. It sounds like stillness. It sounds like peace. It sounds like the version of you who finally knows that being calm is not weakness, it's wisdom. So here's your mantra moving forward. My calm is not indifference. My calm is leadership. Say it until your nervous system believes it. Because the moment you master your inner world, the outer one starts to respect you differently. Not because you demanded it, but because you modeled it. And that's the real shift. That's how you teach people, including avoidance, that love doesn't live in control. It lives in regulation. Now, once you've learned to regulate and stay grounded, there's one more layer, the one that brings all of this together. Because boundaries, regulation, consistency, all of it only works if it's rooted in something deeper. The next step isn't psychological, it's philosophical. Let's talk about the truth behind it all. Why boundaries aren't barriers, but acts of love. You know what I've learned after years of studying human behavior, sitting with people in pain, coaching through heartbreak and healing? It's this. Boundaries are not walls. They're bridges. They don't block love, they teach it. They don't push people away, they invite in the ones who can meet you where you are. Because a wall says, stay out. But a boundary says, if you want to come in, come respectfully. And that right there, that's love in its purest form. You see, most of us grew up believing we had to earn love. We learned that closeness meant control, that boundaries meant rejection, that calm meant disinterest. But that was never love. That was survival dressed as connection. Real love doesn't erase you. It expands you. It doesn't demand your silence. It celebrates your clarity. It doesn't shrink your truth. It supports it. That's what boundaries do. They make room for authenticity. When you say, I need space, you're not pushing someone away. You're making space for peace to enter. When you say, that doesn't work for me, you're not closing a door. You're opening one to integrity. When you hold firm, not from anger, but from calm, you're showing people how to love you without losing themselves. And here's the deeper truth. Every boundary you set from love becomes a spiritual act because it honors both your humanity and theirs. It says, I believe we can connect without control. It says, I believe love doesn't need chaos to feel alive. Boundaries are how you teach the universe who you are ready to be. They're how you shift from chasing validation to embodying self-worth. They're how you stop asking for peace and start being peace. And I want you to hear me. Calm is not cold. Distance is not dismissal. Boundaries are not rejection. They are love wrapped in clarity. You teach people how to love you by how calmly you love yourself. So when you start setting boundaries, expect your world to change. Some people will leave because chaos can't coexist with calm, but others will stay because they finally feel safe. And those are your people, the ones who can meet you in peace, who respect your rhythm, who understand that closeness isn't measured by proximity, it's measured by presence. That's what we're building here. A new kind of relationship with yourself, where peace is your baseline and love grows from there. Now, we're going to close this out with something powerful, a reflection that ties it all together. Because when you understand what boundaries truly mean, you stop fearing loss and you start experiencing freedom. Let's bring it home. Here's the truth I want to leave you with. Boundaries aren't just about teaching people how to treat you, they're about teaching you how to treat yourself. Every time you hold your ground with love, with calm, with clarity, you aren't just saying, I need space or I need respect. You're saying, I deserve peace. And that right there, that's the most powerful message you can send to the world. Because when you embody self-respect, the world starts reflecting it back to you. When you choose to walk away from chaos, you give yourself the gift of freedom. When you stop chasing approval and start respecting your own energy, something incredible happens. You stop feeling trapped. You stop feeling like you have to make someone stay. You stop feeling like you have to explain every move. You become the kind of person who is at peace no matter what's happening around you. And that peace that is your superpower. It's not about making them see you. It's about seeing yourself clearly. And when you do, the right people will see you too. So ask yourself, what would happen if you stopped fearing the silence? What would happen if you stopped fearing distance and instead started embracing it as your opportunity to grow in peace? What would happen if you stopped thinking that love has to be loud and started understanding that it thrives in consistency and calm? You'd start seeing a shift in every relationship. You'd stop begging for validation. You'd stop chasing love. And you'd begin receiving it in its purest, most peaceful form. Because love, real love, doesn't push. It doesn't chase. It doesn't demand. It sits still. It lets the other person come closer on their own. It holds space. And in that space, it allows for connection. You have everything you need right now. You just have to trust yourself enough to create the space for it. So from here, move forward with this. You are the center of your own universe. You are the calm, the clarity, and the consistency that everyone around you needs. You are the one who decides what love looks like. And when you live from that truth, when you start building your boundaries from that kind of self-respect, the world around you will begin to mirror that back to you in ways you never imagined. Take a deep breath. Feel the power of the boundary you just set with yourself, because you are worthy of love and you are worthy of peace. That's your real freedom.